All right, everyone, thanks for joining me. Jeff Kenney, Museum and Archives Manager for Culver Academies, for the next installment of our weekly walks through Culver history. Today, of course, we're in beautiful Memorial Chapel, dedicated in October of 1951, one of the highlights of the campus here at Culver, and of course a place that's familiar to every student and camper at some point. Spiritual life is still a requirement of everyone at Culver, every student at Culver, every camper at Culver, and of course a great many important events happen, every year here. Our opening convocation, our Christmas Vespers, our Memorial Day, Gold Star ceremony, our baccalaureate, all of these take place each year here since the opening of the chapel. Of course, the origins of the chapel go back to World War II, and in fact, plans were on the books before the war even ended in 1944. Noted New York architect Jens Frederick Larsen was brought to campus to begin to conceive not just this building, but this is one of a trio of buildings that Larsen designed here on the campus. An earlier one slightly was the Naval Building, which is dedicated in 1948, and Beeson Memorial Hall, dedicated in honor of Ross Beeson, who actually was killed in action during World War II in April 1944, and that building was completed in 1949. So this is the last of the buildings to be constructed that Larsen designed. Just as a note, up until the opening of this beautiful chapel, religious services as well as theatrical performances, a number of events were held in the Recreation Building, 1924 Recreation Building, which I think we all know. Just as a note on the wartime service of so many of Culver's graduates, some 6,000 served. Of those, a great many were commissioned officers, including generals. Now, among those Culver grads who served, Culver alumni who served in World War II, are two of our 5 Medal of Honor recipients. One of them, George Ham Cannon, class of 1934, is the first Marine to receive the Medal of Honor in World War II. And the other, Jay Zemer, class of 36, is one of the 5 that we see commemorated, of course, in the Great Hall here at Culver. To facilitate this beautiful building, more than 4,000 Culver alumni, parents, and friends contributed over the course of several years. Here we are inside the, again, beautiful narthex here of the Memorial Chapel, and you can see in the shot just some of the names. There are 4 panels here in the entryway and added panels going out. We estimate the official number is 288 Culver graduates lost their lives in World War II. The number is a little debated. There are a few names that are probably added, but they are honored, as well as, again, graduates who lost their lives in the Korean War, Vietnam War, and the War on Terror. Here we are in the sanctuary of the chapel. Of course, if you've been here, you know what a beautiful place it is. Just a couple of facts. By the way, if you're interested, both of these publications on the chapel, these historic publications, and more are available on our digital vault. If you go there and click on photos in the buildings, there's a little section on the chapel with a lot of detail, including a diagram of the 168 ceiling panels that depict Christian symbols and Judeo-Christian symbols, if you've ever wondered, on the ceiling there of the chapel. The beautiful stained glass window over the altar there was designed and executed in Exeter, England. Of course, the rose window up above the choir loft is another beautiful feature. And I just might add that the most recent renovations were completed thanks to the generosity of Colin Brown, class of 1967. Just had a major renovation of this building a few years ago. In the spiral stairway up. The first layer. And if you've never seen the equipment that makes those chimes go off every hour, and more than that, plays the Culver song. This is the machinery. That is where the carillonneur who plays the music would sit. These wires are connected to bells above us that we're going to see in a moment. All right, here we are up in the high heights of Culver here in the tower of the Memorial Chapel here at the carillon. Just a little bit of data on the carillon. 51 bells, ranging from the smallest at 18 pounds to the in excess of 6,000 pounds. As a side note that's not pertinent to this space, the pipe organ has over 2,800 pipes here in the chapel. So as you can see, preponderance of bells here. There's another view of the Culver Carillon, which was manufactured in England by the Gillett and Johnson Company. All right, so here with a special guest today. This is a familiar face, a name to many, many of you. My colleague there at the museum, he's been helping us now for a few years at the Culver Academies Museum, Tony Mayfield, class of 65. And Tony, you've been with Culver many of the years since then. Maybe you can just kind of tell us in a nutshell.
Sure. Coming in 1961, to CMA, graduating in 65. Our 55th reunion this year, actually, for our class. And then came to the staff in 1974, and so this is actually going on my 46th year of activity with the faculty and staff, and it's a great pleasure to be working with you. I spent a lot of that of my time as a cadet, and since as a staff member, kind of associated with the chapel, and so it's a special place for me to be and have this chance to talk about.
I might mention that we're social distancing, and I'm social distancing from our cameraman here, Jerry Ney, class of 57. Thanks to him for helping out.
Sure, and then back in our day, speaking of Jerry, behind the camera here as well, we had Vespers and/or Matins. We had 2 services of an evening, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and there was at least one year during my cadet days, we had Matins. We switched to morning services. So again, visitation or being in the chapel, being a part of this environment was certainly a big part. Today, obviously a number of different kinds of services that they hold and have available. There are certainly a lot of activities that still take place here. What made the chapel, not only the physical presence of the building itself, but the wonderful organ, the pipe organ we have, truly one of a kind, the carillon that plays daily, bells that ring throughout the campus, the reminders of the time, or in the evening, Culver song being played. All those kinds of spatial traditions that anyone who's been here for any time recognizes and kind of carries with them. You may not consciously think of it, but when you're back and you hear that, it brings back those memories that you were part of this place. So it's very unique in that way. The choir was a big organization. Again, back in my time, prior to it in the 50s, maybe even back into the 40s, and you look back at some of the records in the rec building and outside, there are certainly pictures of the choir performing. But during those early 60s, the choir traveled a lot, and I think we probably had at least 60 members of the choir that were up here in the pews, up in the choir loft, and cut a record right here, actually, I think in 64 or 65 for Columbia Records. So it was very unique and special in that way.
I'd like to add from behind the camera that in the mid to late 50s, the Catholic kids would go to early Mass in town, at the church in town, St. Mary's, and had to be back on campus in time for chapel.
And I might add, if you're interested in this little bit of history, if you drive by St. Mary's and Lake there on College Avenue, go by the east door, the door that faces this school. There's a Culver Eagle and Sea over that door in bas-relief that are in honor of the many parents who contributed to the building of that building in the mid-1950s.
I think earlier you had a shot of the doors looking out on the lake, and it just reminded me of what a beautiful place it is for weddings. Both of my children, my son and my daughter, were married here, and that kind of just continued that presence and that sense of belonging to this particular place. And obviously, at the same time, there's been wonderful memorials and funerals here.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, another fairly recent addition to the chapel here was originally built as a meditation chapel. Over here on the east side of the building is now a columbarium. It's kept locked most of the time, but there is a columbarium now added to the chapel.
Jeff's been kind enough to let me to read a poem that I actually wrote about the chapel. I wrote this back in May of 2009, so just about 11 years ago now, but again, it's been such a part of my life as a member of the choir, and faculty member, sitting up in the pews, directed the summer schools and camps for I really always enjoyed sitting down here with the kids and the families to shake their hands and say hello to them and things like this as they either entered or left. But this was my memory or remembrance of the chapel, the Culver Memorial Chapel. The Culver Memorial Chapel is one of those places that is awe-inspiring and spatial, as it stands with dignity and grace, seeking our presence so essential. I remember it well from my cadet days, forming up and marching into this unique place. And although not everyone wanted to be here, all were amazed and found peace in this wonderful space. With its high ornate ceiling and polished smooth wooden pews, we found ourselves reflective in time as we pondered our Culver youth. The chapel has served so many now, these almost 60 years, recognizing weddings, births, and memorials, bringing joy, sadness, and grace, along with loving tears. It's a place that honors sacrifice of oh so many brave Culver men, with the Gold Star ceremony always dignified, with names read and taps played at the end. The chapel doors, the stone floors, the spire reaching for the sky, the bells of the carillon ringing daily, bringing guidance and peace to our lives. Vespers and matins in days gone by, Christmas vespers bringing glory on high. The beauty of the organs sounding and clear, with chapel choirs and countless voices sounding through the years. The Culver Memorial Chapel is just one of those places made to stand the test of time. And it's a home I've come to know that in some way I feel is mine.
All right, thanks everybody for joining us for this week's Wednesday Walk through Culver History. We'll be back next week at 4 o'clock. In the meantime, keep the social distancing up while we must, and we hope to see all of you back in this building and all the buildings on campus sooner than later. I'm Jeff Kenney, Museum and Archive Manager for Culver, and thanks to Jerry Ney for his film work, and Tony Mayfield for joining us today.